Who gets the house in a divorce? We get this question all of the time. And usually people are asking that question because that's their biggest asset and the one thing they're really thinking about. What they're usually asking is like, how does property work? How do things get divided by a judge or in a mediation if we move forward with this divorce? And here's the thing. There's one basic principle you need to understand to really see how a court would divide assets in a divorce in like the most normal of a situation. So remember when we were in elementary school and we learned about a number line? You remember integers? And it's like you'd go from -10 to +10, and then in the middle was 0. Remember those little hash marks? Okay, so that's how I think about it. And 0 is the point that you got married. And everything from 0 into +10, from date of marriage forward, in Texas is presumed, meaning assumed, to be community property. And that means both y'all's, okay? So everything bought or acquired after the date of marriage forward while you're married, even to the point you're divorced. It don't matter if you're separated, okay? People think that, oh, we're separated, so that's not how it works. So everything till the date you're divorced from the time you got married is community. It's both of y'all's. That means, generally speaking, the court is going to divide it half-half. A just and right division. It needs to be equitable, they would say, and what is kind of fair, all right? Now, go from the date of marriage from your 0 on your number line backward prior to marriage. Everything here is separate property. Everything bought or acquired that you owned prior to marriage is considered separate. That means it's yours. You should take it back out of the marriage. Now, here's one of the things that's a little bit difficult to understand is, remember, when you're married, it's assumed to be community property. To prove that something is separate property on the front end, you've got to prove by clear and convincing evidence. That's a higher burden and a higher standard. Basically, you're going to need the receipts. You're going to need the screenshots to prove that something was separate. So things like title documents, bank statements, tax returns, stock letter award, grant paperwork from your office, stuff about that bonus, titles, deeds. That's the kind of stuff that's going to prove that something's separate property. Now, here's the kicker. All right, you can get separate property during the marriage if you get it by gift or inheritance. So if grandma gives you something, your parents give you something when you're buying a house, that can still be separate property. But here's where people make a mistake. They throw that separate property gift into a community property account, and then what? You got a bunch of mud, all right? It gets all mixed up. And untangling that mess is not easy. You may even need what's called a forensic accountant. That's like a fancy CPA who can help you undo all of that commingling. So what you're going to want to do is try to keep what's yours, and what's y'all's. So if you get something in the marriage, I want you, or before the marriage, keep that in a separate bank account. Start a new bank account when you get married where you put both of y'all's stuff. Likewise, if you come into an inheritance or a gift during the marriage, I want you to start a different bank account or use that separate bank account and put that money there so it stays separate. Because generally speaking, it's going to be harder to prove with that higher, clear and convincing evidence burden that something's separate. So you got to keep it clean. And people make that mistake all of the time. Okay, because here's the thing. You may or may not know this, but banks only have a duty to keep your records for 7 years. Did you know that? So you may be thinking, oh, I've been married about 10. No worries. I have all of my bank statements online. No, you don't. I bet you don't. I bet there are 3 years at the beginning of that marriage you don't have the bank statements because banks only have that duty for 7 years. So one of the things that you can do to protect yourself during your marriage, like even if you're like, look, I just accidentally watched this divorce video. I'm not even thinking about getting divorced. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. You're still here, aren't you? So you may want to consider going every year and downloading those statements, just saving them away in some Google Drive, put them in your Dropbox in case you ever need them, because you're not necessarily going to be able to go back and get those. And if you can't prove with that really almost irrefutable evidence that that's your separate property, it's going to be split 50-50 and you won't take it back out of the marriage. Now, one of the things that can change this 50-50 split of the community assets is if there was fault in the breakup of the marriage, if there is disproportionate earning power of the parties. So, like, let's say one person is an engineer, a supervising engineer, and makes $300,000 a year, and one person stayed home, and then this person who stayed home would say, "I need more money at the end of this because I stayed home to raise kids, and I gave up my career. It's going to take me a long time to ever be able to catch back up." In that instance, you may find yourself in a situation where it's not a 50-50. It could be 55-45, 60-40, 70-30. Also, a third thing that can happen is if there's any kind of domestic violence, you better get ready. That judge is very likely to slap you with a pretty disproportionate property division if there's any kind of push and shoving. Like, I mean, I'd seen one case where it's like 90-10% because it was pretty bad stuff. Obviously, I hope none of you are in that situation, but those are just a few things to keep in mind in the way that property division would work in a divorce in Texas.